Hi, I'm Chris Carter of the Locked On Steelers podcast. Today, we're going to talk a lot about what the crazy things that are happening at training camp. Finally, Russell Wilson was at QB1. We'll talk about what that looked like and what that might mean for the rest of the preseason. We'll also talk about how finally on the offensive line, we saw Broderick Jones at left tackle and Troy Fautanu at right. There's so many crazy
Chris, you know you did not have me on this podcast to do anything other than talk about Brandon Aiyuk.
Alan, is that you?
Get with it. You know what's coming.
What are you... Alan, I swear to God, if you still want more of my intros to talk about Brandon Aiyuk, we're going to have problems the next time I see you in Latrobe. But he's right. We got to talk about Brandon Aiyuk again. So why not? Let's get it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. As I said before, we're joined by the man himself, Alan Saunders. He's back on the show, and it's going to become a thing. Anytime there's Brandon Aiyuk nonsense, Alan's got to cut off my intro because I want to just talk football, man. I want to talk Russell Wilson. We finally saw him QB1. We saw the offensive line as it was supposed to be. We got a depth chart. We have a depth chart to talk about. And yet, Brandon Aiyuk is the top story. How you doing, Alan?
I'm doing good, man. You know, was like our off day on Monday, and I had like a great big Pat Meyer story I wrote. Like he broke down the whole plan for the offensive line battle for me. I got all the details. I'm real excited. I'm like, no. All anybody wants to talk about is Brandon Aiyuk. So we're going to talk about Brandon Aiyuk.
All right, so let's get into a few different things here. So I talked about this briefly on yesterday's episode that kind of played into this as well, but basically, we have seen more national reports coming in, saying the Steelers are out of it. The Steelers aren't out of it. They're still in it. And basically what I think is definitely happening here is there's multiple parties involved trying to throw information out there to influence, the kind of return that both sides or all sides want to get here, because it's not just the Steelers involved. As we said before, we've heard Patriots, we've heard Commanders, the Niners might keep Brandon Aiyuk, we've heard Browns, and of course we've heard Steelers for quite some time. But I think, Alan, the situation that's being looked at right now is the Steelers. They know that if they're trading for Brandon Aiyuk, they're paying Brandon Aiyuk a lot of money after they do so. So they're probably saying like, hey, we're trying to not have to give up a lot of draft capital on top of having to pay all that money. And to me, that has been the biggest deterrent to this entire situation. Is I think paying money is one thing, but paying money and giving up major draft capital or major capital in period on top of that money, that's where I draw a line with Brandon Aiyuk here. But do you think that with the reports that we've seen, that the Steelers are actually making a play here where they might not have to give up a first round pick and change, or just a first round pick to get Aiyuk, or the Niners, you think, holding the line and just trying to entice the Steelers to jump?
Yeah, I mean, like I think this is something that's changed a lot. It's going to continue to change. What might be true right now may not be true 8 hours from now, might not be true whenever you're watching this. I think, the Steelers are certainly interested in acquiring Brandon Aiyuk, and they're certainly interested in meeting Brandon Aiyuk's price. I think that's clear. That they are willing to meet his price, if not, in fact, have a deal done. They are one of the teams that has been able to talk to his agent and negotiate a contract. The other thing that I think is clear is the San Francisco 49ers do not have a whole lot of use for draft capital, and the Steelers don't have a whole heck of a lot to offer. The reason it's clear that you've seen reports out there that the 49ers would be very happy to trade Aiyuk to the Browns or to the Patriots is because they like what they're able to get in return from those teams more than they like what they're able to get in return from the Steelers. That doesn't mean they necessarily are not happy with the total value, but it's the kind of assets. If they're getting a player like Amari Cooper back, that is this is a team that's trying to win the Super Bowl. Amari Cooper has a lot more value to the San Francisco 49ers than the Steelers' first-round draft pick has. Even if you might say in sort of like a theoretical sense, an academic sense, that Amari Cooper is worth about the same Steelers' first-round draft pick, they aren't worth the same to the 49ers. And so I think that's where the is that because of what the kind of assets the Steelers have to offer, they're probably going to have to offer more than some of these other teams in order to get the 49ers to agree to it. So far, they haven't been willing to do that. Whether that includes parting with a first-round pick or a significant player. I reported today, along with Derek Bell at SteelersNow.com, that James Daniels has been involved in part of this negotiations. That's something the Steelers have put forward. I think that makes a lot of sense. Also, it didn't happen. So, I mean, that means that clearly, that wasn't enough to tip the scales. I think there is a possibility that the Steelers be patient and hold and wait things out and get Brandon Aiyuk without having to give up a major player or a first-round pick. But I think it's probably less likely that's what happens. That if that happens, that they'll find a better deal or they'll decide to keep him because it's not worth it to trade him for that little or something like that.
Yeah, I think that if the Niners need to and probably will hold the position that's going to be like, hey, you know what? If I'm John Lynch and I'm not getting the return I want from him, I'm not giving up Brandon Aiyuk for what I think is less than what because here's the thing. Like you said, they've been on the cusp for a Super Bowl for a minute now. And this core that they have together, whereas there are some young pieces, there's a lot of older pieces that are pretty important to that core that will not be around much longer. And they need to strike down, which is why, again, the Steelers, a first-round draft pick from the Steelers might not be worth as much as, say, an Amari Cooper or, imagine or name a big player from one of these teams that they could get that could help them right now. So I think I see your point there, and I think that's where the Steelers, if I'm the Steelers, if I'm Omar Khan, I don't think the Steelers are destroyed if they come away and they aren't the team that acquired Brandon Aiyuk. In fact, I think, as I've been saying, I think Van Jefferson's looked really good in camp. I think that they have a potential to be a team that doesn't necessarily need a star second wide receiver, just maybe some good role-playing wide receivers around George Pickens and, use Pat Freiermuth and tight ends in a run game. But if you can steal Brandon Aiyuk, like if the Niners just realize, you know what, we're just not getting Brandon. Brandon's not going to stay here. He doesn't want to play even on a tag, even on anything. He's just not sticking around. We got to get rid of him. And they come down to your asking price. And if that asking price is something like a third-round pick, okay, that's a whole different ball game. And I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. But if I'm Omar Khan and I pull something off like that, I just keep adding it to my resume as like just the GM that just keeps he's the con artist. He keeps taking it from everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I think I said all along in this process that I think things have to get pretty ugly between the 49ers and Brandon Aiyuk for the Steelers to be realistic because they aren't going to have what is going to be perceived by the 49ers as like the best trade package. And so the 49ers are going to have to become motivated sellers for some reason. They're going to have to get to a point where they're just like, get this guy off the roster. I don't want him anymore. It's really hard to argue from a pure business sense that trade is a good idea for the 49ers. In fact, I'd say it's impossible. This is a bad trade for the 49ers, no matter how it goes down. The only way it works out to be a good trade for the 49ers is if they feel that Aiyuk has become such a problem, such an issue, that they're better off not having him than having him. And man, I'll tell you what, like from the outside, it sure doesn't look like we're there. But, certain reports out of San Francisco, if you read Mike Silver in the San Francisco Chronicle, says that, Shanahan's fed up with him. His trade request hit some people in the front office the wrong way. So maybe it's possible that something like that does happen. I agree with what you said before, though. Like, this is clearly not an ideal situation for the Steelers. Their need at wide receiver is not like, what we really need here is the best guy possible on the market. The Steelers really ideally should just be looking for some random wide receiver to upgrade on what they have. There just doesn't seem to be one of those in the market. So they're stuck playing this game where they're probably going to overpay to get a really good wide receiver who will be a good player, but is probably not what would be the ideal fit to help this offense.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I think that there's I think that's kind of the position that the Steelers are in right now. But I also think this can turn into a position of leverage and strength where it's like if the Niners want to get rid of him and as it's been said, Brandon Aiyuk has the leverage to say, like, you know what, Patriots, I'm not signing with you. Browns, I'm not signing with you. And the only way to get rid of him is get to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Omar Khan can sit there and just be like, hey, what do you want to do, John? What do you want to do, guys? Because I'm ready to make moves. And by the way, you're not getting that first round pick. You're not getting that extra player, that you think you're getting there. I think the Steelers need to keep slow playing it. They need to see if the price comes down, and if the price doesn't, oh well, you move on. But if it does, oh boy, there's going to be some Omar coming memes all over the Twitterverse in the coming days. I want to talk about things that actually are happening at training camp. No more jokes. We're actually going to get to what we're seeing there. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter, Alan Saunders, stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you, this show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the app that you can download to your phone right now or go to their website, gametime.co. And when you get there, you'll see that buying tickets to your favorite events won't be stressful because Game Time makes it easy to book tickets to all your favorite sporting events and so much more. And with it being summer, that means it's baseball season, so you get tickets to see all your favorite baseball teams play all across the country and wherever they're at with Game Time. Whether you're in Pittsburgh and you want to see rookie phenom Paul Skeens pitch on the mound for the Pirates, or you're in Los Angeles and you want to watch Shohei Ohtani be a world sensation player for the Dodgers, Game Time has got you wherever you go. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all your sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They give you killer deals even on last-minute tickets, and they have best price guarantees that can't be beat. And you can save up to 60% off your buying when you buy tickets at the last minute, even for sports, concerts, and so many other events. And the best price guarantee means if you find tickets in the same section row for less somewhere else, Game Time will give you 110% of the difference of those prices. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Or go to the website, gametime.co. Terms and conditions apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. Alan, let's get into things we actually saw at training camp. Before, we all know the Aiyuk stuff going on in the background, but it was an exciting day. Just for things that we saw, the Steelers came out in full pads, so it was right after their day off. Starting the week of their first preseason game. They play the Texans on Friday at home, and we saw. In the 7 shots, leading the first team was Russell Wilson, fully geared up. He'd been wearing full gear for a minute, but he'd only been on 7-on-7s and sparingly, and then doing little handoffs. And he actually participated. Now, he wasn't a full participant. He didn't practice the whole time. With the first team, he sort of alternated with Justin Fields. But I thought it was interesting to see him in there. And in 7 shots, and the one pass that he threw, it was a touchdown to George Pickens.
Yeah, it looked good. I mean, it wasn't a lot of work. I think he threw like 5 passes. But him and Fields 50-50 on the first team. And that makes sense too, because even though they certainly want to get Russell Wilson into practice shape, they're also probably going to play Justin Fields in this game coming up against the Houston Texans on Friday. So you kind of got to keep them both ready to go. They started to do some situational stuff. They had a play clock at practice. They were doing kind of the live substituting and changing from between phases, unlike what they do at the early part of camp. So there's definitely a lot to like about what we saw from Russell Wilson. I think you want to keep seeing more, but this doesn't look like a player that has any ill effects from a calf injury 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now. And it certainly doesn't look like anyone that the time off has been in any hindrance.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about the offensive line, though, because I think that was more of the story that everyone was kind of waiting for. Russell Wilson's been a foregone conclusion that it was going to happen at some point. We weren't sure when we were going to happen. In fact, my Tuesday episode with Matt Williamson was about when are they going to start putting Broderick Jones at left tackle and Troy Fautanu at right, because clearly that's the plan. And then we saw it Tuesday. So I'm going to just say it. I'm just going to say it. I think the Steelers watched Locked On Steelers Tuesday early in the morning and said, Chris Carter's right. We got to get him out there. So clearly they listened to me, Alan. I was the impetus for finally doing this. So thank me, Steeler Nation. Thank you, Chris. I'm playing here.
Well, if you read SteelersNow.com, you would know that I talked to Pat Meyer about this on Sunday, and Pat Meyer broke the whole thing
you
down.
You were the impetus. Oh,
Pat Meyer. I said to Pat, what are you doing with Broderick Jones? When are you going to play him at left tackle? He talked to me Sunday, okay, at practice, and he said, I said, do you need to see Broderick Jones playing left tackle before you can put him out there? He said, I want to see him out here doing it. I want to see him do it in the preseason. You're going to see Broderick out there playing left tackle in these preseason games too. We want to see it.
Thank you,
Alan. And of course, nobody read that story because it was published on Monday. While all anybody ever wanted to do was talk about Brandon Aiyuk, but it was all me. It was all me. I was way ahead of the curve here.
Let's thank you, Steelers fans. Say thank you, Alan, into your where you're listening in your car, you're watching on YouTube. Thank Alan Saunders. He's what started this. But in all seriousness, I did think it was good to see Broderick Jones on the left, Trey Fautanu on the right, and a point that Matt Williamson brought up. He was like, "Look, Broderick Jones don't look out of place in either one. He looks like he's comfortable, and I think that's part of their okayness with why things have gone this way so far. They're like, because you put him at left, it's not like he's slowing down. He's not having to think about it. He's like, look, put me wherever you want. I'm gonna ball out. I think that's part of the encouragement there. But I also thought it was encouraging to see Troy Fautanu on the right side with the first teams, and again, not looking out of place. And it kind of gave me the idea that, you know what? This may be a lot closer than what people were thinking a week ago when we were looking at practice and everyone was asking, when are we going to see these two? Alan, what was your interpretation of what you saw with those guys out there with the first team in the spots that ideally they would eventually fit into as starters?
You know, it's funny because I keep hearing about, you got to get the offensive line together early so they can gel, and they're wasting time because they're not out there in the positions that they're going to be out there. In Tuesday's practice, they basically ran like 1.5 team offensive line. Isaac Seumalo was off. Dan Moore took about half his normal reps. James Daniels took about half his normal reps. And they just jumbled the whole rest of the first and second team offensive line together. Spencer Anderson and McCormick were playing both guards. Jones was playing both tackle spots, sometimes with Moore, sometimes with Fautanu. Dylan Cook was involved in there. They're just throwing mix and match offensive linemen together in whichever order they come up with. And I think that was the best day the offensive line has had all training camp. They were pushing holes, huge holes. I mean, bottom of the depth chart guys like Jonathan Ward and LaMichael P. Ryan were just ripping off runs because they had huge holes. I thought the offensive line looked awesome. There was a play. One of Russell Wilson's passes is like a 7-yard pass to Darnell Washington after he stood in the pocket for long enough to make himself a turkey sandwich, eat the whole thing, lick the plate clean, give a little bit to the dog, and then he's like, all right, there's DW downfield. Like, I thought the offensive line was great. Probably the best day the offensive line's had. And they did it while they just threw all the pieces together however they landed throughout the day.
So, like you were saying, Zach Frazier was in that mix too and looked good as well.
Really good. So I think this whole oh my God, they're wasting time by not playing Broderick on the left side panic has been totally overblown. I think it makes sense in the regard that they didn't want to give Troy Fautanu too much too soon. They liked his progression. They wanted to keep it positive and keep things moving in a steady pace. I think Troy Fautanu's progression is going to be the thing that drives the whole bus here. Is if he looks ready for day one, and I think he's on track to do that right now. But if he looks ready for day one, then I think you're going to see Broderick Jones play left tackle day one. And if he doesn't look ready for day one, then I think you're going to see Broderick Jones play right tackle day one. And I don't think Broderick Jones cares where he plays, and he'll figure it out. I think he'll be fine no matter what.
I'm with you on this. I think Broderick Jones is a stud in the making. I think that he's I thought he was very good last season. He had obvious things to polish, but he showed things that I was like, these are boxes I wanted to see checked. I think he's been checking more boxes in training camp. I think Trey Fautanu has looked pretty good as well. Here was Trey Fautanu when we got to catch up with him after practice on Tuesday.
Trey, looked like you got some first team reps at right tackle. What's been your progress? What do you think you're improving in the most right now?
Honestly, for me, just making sure that negative plays don't affect the next play is the biggest thing for me, because coming in my first couple weeks here, I wanted to be perfect. I wanted everything to be right, but we're in the NFL now. Everyone's good. So just making sure that I don't let a negative play affect the next one, and just making sure I'm taking strides each and every day. And whatever our emphasis today was, what I wrote down in my notebook was get off the ball and get to my spot. And because I knew we were doing 2 minutes today, so that was the emphasis for today, and just making sure that I'm playing my game, and that's physical football. So, yeah.
Troy, are you closer to perfection, Phil?
What was that?
Are you closer to perfection that you've been seeking?
Oh, I don't think so. No, not at all.
Are you rounding into it? Do you feel like you're?
I don't think there is such thing as perfection in football. Like you constantly strive for it, knowing that you're never gonna achieve that. But that's the thing, is that I expect that for myself, regardless of what happens, regardless who I'm going against. For me, it's just making sure that because I want to win every single rep, man. That's what was ingrained in me in college and in high school, is making sure that you approach every single rep like wanting to win it, and then all the technique stuff is being coached by the coaches. But for me, I can control my effort and what happens from my end. So
we know you've been picking Isaac's brain since you got here, but when you're with the ones, you're usually next to James Daniels. What stands out to you about him, and how much is he helping you?
James is a really good talker. Like when he wants me on the same page as him, he'll nudge me and make sure that he'll give me the count if I forget it, or if say we're in a passing down, he wants me to get off the ball, he'll tell me that. And that's the thing, is trusting guys like that that have played a lot of football, and just making sure that I'm doing my best to do my job. So
is he much of a talker off the field?
Yeah, man.
Because I know, like, he's kind of said before, he's like, I'm not like a huge football junkie. Like, I don't do it all the time in the off season. But...
Yeah, I mean, off the field, really, we don't talk too much about football, man. James is awesome. He went out of his way to talk to my mom and make sure that she was okay, and he reached out to her and was like, gave her his number, make sure that if anything she needed, that he was there. And everyone in this offensive line room has really embraced me, and I really feel that way. Not even just me, Zach, and Mason. And I really feel like we fit well with a lot of these guys, and just making sure that we're not pulling the group down, that we're elevating the game.
Do you get any notice, or is it when you show up on the field like, hey?
Yeah, Coach Isaac and Coach Pat had told me, Dan, and Broderick before practice today that I was going to be running with the ones today at right tackle. And for me, it's just an opportunity. And nothing's set in stone, you know what I mean? It's just an opportunity for me to play big boy football, you know what I mean? And going against the best now is only going to prepare me for whatever comes in the future. So,
to me, I hear a mature young rookie that's ready to get out there and show what he's got. Alan, what has been your overall impression of Troy Fautanu and how ready he is to kind of just jump in and be a starter for the Steelers? And when do you think that'll happen?
I do think it'll happen. It's going to be a process. They're not going to just hand a kid starting job, sight unseen. Dan Moore is not what I would call one of the better offensive tackles in the NFL, but he's got like 49 starts or something like that. Like, it is not like it's just a vacant hole at that position. And so, 1 week of training camp is not going to do it. 2 good weeks of training camp with the twos is certainly not going to do it. But you start to stack weeks and stack preseason games and stack impressive performances, I think you get there. The thing that was really stood out to me about Fautanu, and it's interesting that he talked about this in that video, is that, man, you got to really pick to find some negative in his game. Yeah. Like, you're not seeing a lot of false starts. You're not seeing a lot of bad holds. You're not seeing a lot of missed assignments, guys running free by him. Like, he gets beat like every rookie. I mean, he's going up against TJ freaking Watt. Like, he's going to lose some reps. Even Nick Herbig is a really tough assignment for a rookie offensive lineman. But he's doing the job, man. I don't see, like, compared to Broderick Jones a year ago, he is just so much more advanced in just terms of there aren't very many mistakes to clean up. Like, it has been a very clean start to his training camp. I do think he's on a path to start week 1. He's got to continue on it, but I think he'll get there.
Absolutely. I want to talk about this depth chart that just came out. We'll get Alan's thoughts in a second here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, I want to remind you, this show is also brought to you by LinkedIn. Whether you're hiring for a small business or you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role, that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals, so you can find them everywhere, and you can find them in a place where you can't find anywhere else. Even those who aren't actively searching for a new job right now might be open to the perfect role. That's why in a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other LinkedIn leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats these days and might not have the time or resources to hire. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter here with Alan Saunders of SteelersNow.com. The depth chart the first official depth chart of the Pittsburgh Steelers have released just ahead of their first preseason game. Not a whole lot of surprises here, Alan. A lot of chalk of what we expected to happen here. Russell Wilson's QB1. Your top 3 wide receivers are Van Jefferson, George Pickens, Calvin Austin, not in that order, just listing the starting receivers. Broderick Jones, our right tackle number 1. Nate Herbig is starting center. Dan Moore starting left tackle. Troy Fautanu listed as the second left tackle. I think that's just a formality for right now because it's how much we've seen Troy Fautanu play right tackle as well. Keanu Benton at nose tackle. But one thing I thought that was kind of what we assumed would happen, but a good statement for him. Beanie Bishop is indeed the starting nickelback, according to this. Patrick Queen and Landon Roberts, the top 2 linebackers there in the middle. A lot of chalk here, but was there anything that caught your eye that could change soon here, other than the obvious offensive line changes that we've been talking about here, Alan?
Yeah, man. I mean, they got 4-string linebacker Jacoby Windman listed as an outside linebacker. Frankly, that's ridiculous. He's an inside linebacker. It's not even close. I've never seen him play outside linebacker. They got it wrong.
You're silly. You're ridiculous.
No, I mean, it's a depth chart for a preseason game, man. There's not a whole lot here. The one thing I do see in here that, look, this depth chart is mostly just an acknowledgement of what has already happened. It's not like It's a prediction of the future, but I think this is the first time we've seen the team sort of in writing list Ryan Watts as a strong safety.
Good point.
And he's been doing it in training camp, and he's been doing a very good job of it in training camp. And I think he's a player that you look at the tape, it wasn't all pretty, but you see the size and you think maybe there's a project to be had there. You could turn him into one. And man, it seems like they turned him into one real quick. He's taking the safety awesomely. He's making plays on the ball. He tackles well. So I do think this is in terms of news, obviously Beanie getting the starting nod, sort of historic for an undrafted free agent. But I think we saw that coming. He's been taking, first team reps since the first day of training camp. It's just, like I said, an acknowledgement of what has already happened. Maybe with this, that's something where this is the team sort of semi-officially saying, yeah, Ryan Watts is a strong safety.
I think that is really interesting to see too. That leads me to my question to you about this with the secondary as it is right now in the current depth chart. How do you look at this secondary being assembled here? Do you expect 5 corners, 5 safeties? And if you and however you have it going there, who do you think are the prime people that are going to be kept on the 53-man roster?
Yeah, man, I think this is a really interesting position. I think basically I think you've got Beanie, the 4 starters plus Beanie are definitely locks. Miles Killebrew, an all-pro special teamer. He's making the team. DeMonte Casey, with as much as they want to play 3 safeties, he's absolutely on the team. And I think Darius Rush and Corey Trice are in very good position. I think the question becomes, do they want a 10th defensive back? And if they do, is it Ryan Watts? Is it Graylin Arnold? Is it someone like Anthony Averett, who has a little bit more experience? This is a very young – Beanie's a rookie. Rush has played very minimal. Corey Trice is in his 2nd year but hasn't played yet. Watts is a rookie. That would be really inexperienced depth group of defensive backs to go into the season with. It's all young players I like, and young players I think are going to be good. But if someone were to suffer a major injury, are they okay with a Trice or a Rush or a Watts or stepping into a full-time starter role? I'm not sure about that. So maybe someone like Anthony Averett because of his experience, and I think has played pretty well, especially this last week. He had an interception on Tuesday. I think he's a guy that could maybe step into there. So I think you kind of got about 9 locks, and then maybe Graylin Arnold. He's a little bit more experienced guy too. If you want someone behind Beanie to play in the slot. So will it be 9? Will it be 10? And if it's 10, is it Watts? Is it Averett? Is it Arnold? I think that's probably where I'm at with this DB room. But I think the young guys are playing well. I think I'd keep playing them.
I kind of like the idea of keeping the young guys around. Right now, I'm looking at, like you said, the obvious 5: Joey Porter, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Deshaun Elliott, Dante Jackson, Beanie Bishop. Those are your 5 starters as projected right now. But I like the idea of Corey Trice and Darius Rush. I like I mean, Miles Killebrew is your special teams agent. You're not getting rid of him. I really like Monte KZ as a 3rd safety option there. So you get 4 guys right there. So that's 9 already that we've named. So if you keep a 10th, I think they should keep Ryan Watts. I think that he's played well in camp, and you want to keep a guy like that around. You saw the injuries you suffered at safety last year. You want to keep around a guy like that. And by the way, they don't have to account for Cameron Sutton because of his injury, or not his injury, his suspension, where he's going to not be on the roster, but be someone that you can count on in about 2-3 months. So I'm right with you here. I'd keep the young guys around. I'd see what they got. And go from there. But there's still a lot to explore with this depth chart, still a lot to explore with this team. We got Wednesday and Thursday practices at Steelers training camp before they play Friday. So there's still a lot to take things on. Of course, we'll have you covered on all of that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Alan, thanks so much for joining us. Alan, people can find you, follow you, and get to know and get to see more of your work.
At @Saunders_PGH on X, Instagram, and TikTok. PGH Steelers Now, the site's account SteelersNow.com is where all my written work lives. You can find my podcast, Steelers Morning Rush and Steelers Afternoon Drive, at the Steelers Now YouTube channel or anywhere you find podcasts.
Absolutely. I'm Chris Carter. Find me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here every day, Monday through Friday, on the Locked On Steelers podcast, on your favorite podcasting apps, and on YouTube. Back tomorrow with more from Steelers training camp here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.